Hey guys, welcome to the shop. Today's video is kind of a cool and different project. I don't really do a lot of kind of military surplus or repro work in this shop right now. I do like taking on projects like these. They're quite a bit of fun. So this is a Czech Mauser. I think it's a VZ24, or is it a 24 or 40 something? I honestly don't remember off the top of my head. I'm not extremely familiar with all of the K98 clones or derivatives out there in the Mauser world, so excuse me if I misspeak. I'm sure some of you watching this video are much bigger experts than I. But this customer called me and said he wanted to do a Repro Sniper project, so we did a Repro Sniper project. I'm kind of glad we used the rifle we did. From what I understand, he purchased the barrel to action with no bolt. He got a bolt separately. We got really lucky. Everything had spaced out. He got, I don't know if it's an actual German or a Czech stock that was missing some of the metal hardware, so we did that. He's got the post-war stamped steel winter trigger guard, which is pretty cool. So I don't feel bad about permanently modifying an original gun to mount a scope. What we have here is a Waffenmeister, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I think it's a ZF4. I'll have to double check, or you guys can double check for me. And they're high turret mounts. These are actually pretty difficult to get set up. I had to shim inside the ring, unfortunately, because what was happening is I built the bottom up of this front turret with brace, so it was sitting high enough we could actually zero at 100 yards. But we couldn't use the sights if I brought it up any higher, so I had to shim inside the scope ring. Which isn't necessarily best practice. I found it on quite a few guns. I've never had issues with zeroing in that case. But what I will do, and this is kind of a trick of the trade, is I'll dissolve rosin in a solvent and I'll paint that on the inside of the rings and paint both sides of the shims with it. And we did that to both scope rings, so I don't foresee any issues with the scope moving in the rings. I understand that if you don't have the screws perfectly tight on these mounts, you can have issues with wandering zero. And what you don't see in this is the screws are actually drilled in at a 40-degree angle to the receiver rings, which made drilling and tapping this actually quite a bit more challenging than it would have appeared on the surface. But we have a really cool quick detach scope, and we can still use the iron sights when they're at the 200-meter setting. You can't see them at the 100-meter setting, unfortunately, and it's kind of a trade-off with I did build up the front scope mount. I wasn't really comfortable removing material on the rear, even though I did remove a little bit, because I didn't want to risk having issues with matching the contour and then not getting enough surface area in contact with the receiver ring. Period correct on these would have these either hard or soft soldered, I'm not 100% sure, in place in addition to the screws. I used a modern adhesive instead, which should be suitably strong. I've found some forum documentation of people not doing that at all and not having issues with wandering zero. However, just due to the mounting system and its sheer mass, I wasn't entirely comfortable with how little surface contact we had here, so I wanted to reinforce these a little bit. You know, there is a reason that solder was used, and I believe that to be that the service life these would endure in wartime context is frankly much more abusive than it will see in a recreational shooting sports context, I should say, not contact. You're far less likely to just bang this into a tree and abuse the crap out of it, is what I'm saying. So this is a really cool gun. I don't get to do a lot of projects like this. I am starting to see more really interesting custom work in the shop beyond just, you know, the bog standard sporting rifle, which is kind of fun. I'm going to go shoot this before it's released to the customer because I have bore sighted it on a 50-yard target and we're very close, but I would like to go actually live fire it and try and not necessarily zero it, but just make sure nothing's moving around more than it's supposed to. I'm always a little bit concerned when I do some of these more flexible, should I say, mountings, just because there's relatively little contact surface in the front, and these aren't particularly fine screws. They're a metric equivalent to an 8x40, just under. I think their closest English equivalent would be a number 7, but I don't think we see that very much anymore. So I'm not supremely confident in their holding. I think it actually wouldn't have been a bad idea. I don't know why this wasn't done, to actually drill and tap a third screw down from the top to really secure these both. But, you know, the Germans probably understood what they were doing and did these reasonably well. In my experience, a lot of German firearms are remarkably overbuilt or they're remarkably underbuilt, and I think this design really leans more towards the overbuilt side of things. But again, I'm not an expert on the particular issues that will come up with this exact type of scope mounting system. Really, the only problem I see is mostly ergonomic. This had to be so high to clear the flag safety. I think a lower profile safety would have been nice. I understand that there's the German sniper safety, which extends out rearwards under the ocular bell, but where we have the scope on this now is very comfortable for point shooting offhand. At least for me, the customer is a little bit shorter than me, so I think actually the scope might even be in a better position for him than it is for me. This is really cool. It was a lot of work. I think I have one video of this set up on the machine. Because my Bridgeport doesn't nod, this was actually a little bit harder of a job for me than it would have been if I had nod in the machine. What I had to do is build an aluminum fixture block, which is it still on my bench? It's not handy, but I had an aluminum fixture block, and I actually used 1/4-20 screws and washers to hold the barreled receiver onto this block, and then I tilted the head on the machine. So basically I had the rifle clamped on the machine as such and had the head tilted in to drill on the receiver, which frankly I think worked out reasonably well. I got it done right the first time, which is always nice. These kind of tasks can be really tricky, and there's also a lot of potential issues with incorrectly measuring angles on these, because they had tapered seats. So I measured very many times, and I used 40 degrees. After I did this, I actually found someone else who did this and also used 40 degrees and was successful. So I'm going to guess that is probably the correct angle to use. Depending on how I measured, I got between 38 and 42 degrees, plus or minus a few minutes. So I used 40 degrees because I'm assuming there's about a 2-degree angular measurement error in the methodology I used, so we got 40 degrees. I don't know what measurement methodology the other guy used, so we might both be wrong, but looking at the scope, the screw bases, they're parallel and flush with the recesses in the bases, so, you know, probably worked out all right. I think this is one of those things where being a perfectionist is very, very valuable, in doing the work, but it's also far too easy to pick apart what you're doing and see issues in it. These are really cool guns. You don't really see as many Mausers as you did even 10 years ago right now. I think now in the milsurp community, what we get into is very much a culture of preservation, but don't even do restoration on these. I think the winds are going to blow differently sooner or later in regards to what's considered acceptable alterations on firearms. You know, it is pretty cool to do repro snipers. I'm seeing original snipers, depending on condition, and may not even have scopes, going from about $7,500 to about $15,000. These are remarkably expensive firearms, if original. So this is a relatively budget-friendly way to get what is a quite rare firearm otherwise. And when done in the way that this customer did, you're also not going to have issues with losing the original collector's value of the firearm, because this was a pile of parts when he acquired it, so there really wasn't any significant collector's value here. And on a cursory investigation of all of the numbered parts, not a single thing matches. So if this is the kind of project you're interested in doing, absolutely call me. I do a lot of stuff like this. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this project as much as I did.